Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Choose Positive Living right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and I pray that I do this author's name right. Dr. Author Ciaramicoli. No, sorry. Please say your name so I don't dishonor it.
Ciaramicoli. It's a long one.
Ciaramicoli. Italian?
Yes.
You're right. Great name there. We're going to be talking today about reuniting America. And boy, do we need to really look at that right now. A relationship solution to bridging the political, social, personal charm dividing our nation, or chaos dividing our nation, which is what we're seeing right now. And it's he's a licensed clinical psychiatrist, which I'm sure he's been completely overworked in this last 18 months. He's been treating clients for 35 years. He's currently in private practice, while also developing courses and podcasts for educational company in China based on his recent books, The Power of Empathy, The Soulful Leader, and The Triumph of Diversity. He's a faculty member of the International Association of Wellness Practitioners and is a global presence ambassador parenting 2.0. He has been the faculty at Harvard Medical School for several years, lecturing for the American Cancer Society, chief psychologist at Metro West Medical Center, and director of Metro West Counseling Center and Alternative Medicine Division of Metro West Wellness Center and in Massachusetts. And he was previously the chief medical officer in soundminds.org, a popular health, mental health site. My goodness. You must have been at school for a long time with all the education that you have there.
Yeah.
But you've certainly seen the gamut, and you've certainly participate, which is one of the things that we really need to look at if we're going to find a solution. We all need to come together and participate. You know, this isn't a one person just leading the bandwagon or leaving it up to our government. If we want to unite America, or if we want to unite anything, we've really got to learn to listen and come together. But I think first and foremost is ask ourselves some very serious questions. You know, why is it divided, and was I a part of that? Welcome to the show, love.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do we ask that question? Because we don't get divided unless there's differences of opinions and people thinking each other is right. It always comes down to us in, you know, maybe it's some insecurity or lack of education or a fear of something that stops us from kind of wanting to unite and bring people together instead of just looking at division. Do you find that?
Yes. I mean, I think one of the main reasons that we're so divided here in America, and of course there are some other countries in the same situation, is that we misperceive. We are so inundated with media and Twitter and other accounts that tell us how to think and how to perceive other political figures and so forth, that people have not taken the time to really ascertain the difference between fiction and the truth. And if you listen to the same news station every day, you're going to be developing a certain bias every day. You know, as I comment in the book, the people who only watch the news for brief time in the morning and brief time in the evening, they were not news junkies, so to speak. They were the most accurate perceivers of what was going on in our country, because they were not really buying into the propaganda that we hear on a daily basis. So they could make up their minds and differentiate fiction from reality.
I kind of call Fox News where they take a pimple and make it into a volcanic eruption. And we know fear sells. Sensationalism, the way they tell it, and the drama they put behind it, and immediately people are on edge. I've got something to be fearful about. I've got something to be hateful about. And we as consumers have to be careful what we're buying and be more discerning of, quite honestly, the garbage that's been dealt out, and go, you know, it's up to me to find out whether this is actually fact or fiction and what's the agenda behind it. But We don't do that, do we? We don't take on our own accountability.
Well, it takes work to discover who you are
Mm-hmm.
and what your world is about. But it's absolutely necessary for happiness and well-being, not only for ourselves, but the people close to us and for our world. But it takes time. It
Yes.
takes time. I mean, most people are going to listen to the news on TV or on their phone during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And, are they watching CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News, as you said, or One America? And we have to realize that particularly evening news is distorted.
Mm.
It's a lot of entertainment, as you were alluding to. It's a lot of entertainment. It's not based on facts. And we have to have the patience and the tolerance to ascertain the facts. It's incredibly important to do so.
We can't point a finger at someone else. In judgment, in persecution, in righteousness, there's three pointing back at you. And that's going saying, well, where's your accountability? Where, nobody, casting the stone, right? We all live in glass houses. We're very quick to climb that bandwagon of hate and hysteria. And I think, certainly in the last few years, we've just been seeing a tornado of hysteria. And people so easily get caught up in it, conspiracy
Yeah.
theories, hate theories, this and that. The next thing you know, they're swirling around and they don't know how to get out of it.
Yes.
And it's really hard for people that are stuck in that to kind of realize that they've bought into something that's a bill of goods that somebody else is profiting from at
Yes.
your cost.
Yes. And especially if people are vulnerable. We
Mm,
have 40 million people in America living under the poverty line,
mm,
16 million children living in poverty.
yeah.
So we have a great deal of poverty in this country, especially in the Midwest and the South. And those individuals are very vulnerable to listening to certain people that are promising them certain things. They're going to bring back coal and bring back machinery and so forth and so on, none of which took place. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're out of work, and the suicide rates in America are the highest they've been in 30 years.
Mm,
So people are hurting, and when people are hurting and don't have faith in Congress, before the second last presidential election, 80% of Americans said they had no faith in Congress. 80%. And why is that? Because we don't have senators that cross the aisle anymore. If you're Republican, you vote Republican. If you're Democrat, you vote Democrat. And people have become identified with either political party as part of who they are,
yes,
so
yes.
much a part of who they are. In the 1960s, 3 and 4% of Republicans and Democrats were upset if one of their adult children married somebody of the opposite political party. Today, it's 85 and 87%.
What?
As if it's like some awful thing. My daughter's going to marry a Republican or a Democrat. That's how deeply identified people are with political party today.
Where do
The
you think this
irony
came
is,
from? Is this staring back, 5 or 6 years ago where we started seeing this hysteria being built up? Do you think it's always been there and was just being revealed and now is being escalated?
I think people have lost faith in Congress. That's
Mm.
that the legislature. That's true. And we do not have people who cross the aisle anymore. We used to in previous years, but we don't now.
But there's also a consciousness in voting. If it was good for the people, they would vote for it, who doesn't matter which party. And now it's just out of spite. They're going to refuse to vote just
Yeah.
because it's a Democrat thing or whatever. And who suffers? The people.
We know from credible research the idea that Democrats hate Republicans and Republicans hate Democrats. It's not true. It's grossly exaggerated. Grossly exaggerated. Democrats, they say Democrats think Republicans are racists. That's not true, generally speaking.
Mhm.
Republicans think that Democrats are socialists. That's not true either. These are things that we hear in the media every day, but the
Yeah.
majority of people do not think that way. It's about 6% of people are in the far right, about 8% in the far left, and the rest are called, the 67% are called the exhausted majority. They're
Mm.
right in the middle. That's where most people are, but we don't hear about those people. We don't hear about the centrist view. We hear about the extremes because
Yes.
that's what gathers interest, sells commercials, and
Mhm.
makes more money.
And keeps people fearful. And if you've got people fearful, you have them in control.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
giving up our own control. We're giving up our own rights by buying into the hysteria. instead of deducing and asking the questions, and has it got anything to do with me anyway? And where's my own empowerment? We're giving up our power all the time. And it's to whom? To whom is benefiting here? Who is actually benefiting from this huge division that is taking place?
That's a great point that you made, because yes, fear leads to control. If we can make people afraid of the people on the other side, rather than realizing you have more in common with them than you realize. I highlight in the book a number of issues that Republicans and Democrats in general agree upon, but we don't hear much about it.
Right.
We hear what gathers attention, and we hear what contributes to fundraising.
Yeah. I'm afraid, as an outsider, yes, I'm in Canada, and then, kind of happens here too, but I look at how much it costs to elect someone. And I go, look at that kind of money, who's bought them? Because it's about who's bought them. And then you look at the poverty line of children who don't, have medicine, or don't have food, or, the amount of abuse that's going on with the children because of that neglect. And it just breaks my heart. And I go, well, surely somebody's got to see the disproportion here. Why are we spending billions of dollars to elect one president at the cost of people literally going starving? I mean, is this purely because the media isn't addressing that, or have we bought into something?
Well, it's a machine. People start running for president 5 or 6 years before an election. And you have to have a lot of money, multi-millions. People from other countries, I have patients from other countries, and they say, couldn't you do better? Aren't there other people who could run for president? I said, well, of course there are, but you have to if you don't have the money, you will never, no one will ever know who you are.
We've got to change that system, haven't we? Like in the UK, there's a cap on how much you can actually raise. And, we need to change that, because it just leaves absolute openness to corruption. And, and being born. And then now we look at the politicians and go, okay, who funded you? And then we look at, but they funded you. They've got an agenda. They now own you. That doesn't mean that you're actually working for the people. So whether it's Congress, or, the president, or political parties around the constituents, we don't trust them. And we don't trust them because we feel they're working for someone else who put them in power, rather than working for the communities.
Yes. And the other aspect that is very discouraging is, I have a client who's a lobbyist in DC. She's been there many, many years. And she tells me that in the old days, Republicans and Democrats would have dinner together. You'd see them together. People would cross the aisle. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan were close friends. Ed Kennedy and McCain, John McCain were close friends. She said, today you don't even see them eat with each other of the opposing party. The other thing she said is, you can have breakfast with a person, a senator, and you ask the senator what they think of a certain bill, and they say, it's a terrible bill. I would never vote for that. Then she said they check their pollsters. So if they're a senator from Wisconsin, their polls come in by noontime and tell them what the citizenship of Wisconsin wants, what they would like them to vote for. She said, and then you'll see them go on TV and change their mind completely.
No integrity. Yeah.
Because they want to keep their job.
Yes.
Because it's a job where people don't track. Mm-hmm. You don't know how many meetings they attend. Mm-hmm. One of the senators who ran for president 2 times ago, one of the journalists took some inventory about how many times he actually went to meetings that was required. He missed 87% of meetings. Can you imagine not going to work 87% of the time and being paid?
Right.
But his constituency didn't even know that he didn't go. If he wasn't running for president, that would have never been found out.
Right. Yeah. So
they're lucrative jobs with high-paying money. And then when they become known, a half an hour speech is $100,000. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's extremely lucrative. So the pollsters keep telling them what you need to do to keep the job.
Yeah.
Do we have some people of integrity that would go against that? Look what happened to Liz Cheney in America when she stood up and said, I don't believe in such and such, and I don't believe this election was fraudulent and so forth. Well, they ostracized her immediately because she wasn't part of the Klan.
Right. But that's the favorite thing of ostracizing people, isn't it? Is that, we really become trash media. I mean, I don't know if you know the TV show The Newsroom, which was brilliantly written. If you have the opportunity to watch it, they did 3 seasons, and they take a lot of the current stories that were happening at the time, but although it's a fictitious show, but it was intelligent. But they were already fighting. I've got to get the facts and the truth out there. No, because our sponsors won't sponsor if you do that. And it's like, we've got to look at who is behind the, reporting. It has always meant to have been a job of integrity, of really reporting the truth of what is going on. And now it's like you're owned by the commercials, by the sponsors, and so you can't go against that. And as you said, people will vote one way or the other depending on where their popularity is, because they want to keep their job. But they are servants of the people.
Yes.
They're working for the people. When did they forget that, or did they ever even know that when they went into it?
Well, I think they will say that they knew that, and that they're aware of that, and they speak to that issue, but their behavior doesn't indicate.
Yeah.
We need people that are not so committed to one religion or one political party, but they will vote their conscience, vote with integrity, lead with integrity. We don't have that now. We've lost that in America.
What about Bernie Sanders? He's always been pretty consistent.
Well, yes, Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders. That's an excellent point, because he's been of the same position since the time he began to now. Yes, yeah. Bernie Sanders would be a different person in that regard. He'd be an exception.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why millennials like him so much, because quite honestly, they're tired of the bull.
Well, because he's genuine.
Yes, and we've been sold the bag of goods, and obviously this year it's been obviously the pandemic, but we're seeing things kind of stabilize on the political front on the surface. Not so many tweets about everything, and that last 5 years affected the world in the disruption. And it's like that office of empowerment is meant to be something that you adhere to. It's a responsibility. You are working for the people. You're meant to stand for the people. And it's become more of an ego thing. And seems to have been working for the people has completely gone. And we see it with a few political leaders around the world. And it's become a form of dictatorship. And it's okay. Why do we have such a dysfunctional community and dysfunctional society, dysfunctional everything, education, police force, and everything else? Is if you look to the top and what they represent and the lack of integrity, and that trickles down, then people think, well, if they can get away with it, so can I. So the word accountability has to come into the conversation. And that means not just the accountability of people in power, but our own accountability, because we don't realize things we say, things we do have a ripple effect. And so we have to have accountability and responsibility for our own dialogue and the way we treat other people. We don't want to fuel that kind of negative chaos. So how do we become the solution that is going to bring about a more, equalization, a more equilibrium?
I think empathy is really one of the keys. Because empathy is the capacity to understand and respond to the unique experiences of another. I have 3 groups that have been ongoing, 3 psychotherapy groups have been ongoing for over 30 years. And what I focus on in those groups is helping people reduce their prejudice toward themselves and others, to see clearly. And we see people come in with all kinds of little subtle biases and prejudices about themselves and others. And when they leave at the end of 2 or 3 years, it's changed, because we go over it and over it, where someone will, not like a certain person in the corner but they don't know why. They just have a feeling, And we talk about racism and sexism, and we have to, and we gain clarity.
Yeah.
We gain clarity over time, because these groups are focused on empathic listening. Slow down.
Yes.
Nobody yells at anybody else. Nobody can talk over anyone else. I don't allow that. So when you're talking, we have to listen. And we have to indicate to you that we understand you. And then I can talk.
Right.
And people sort of realize over time the biases they've had, because they may think something of a person in day one, and then in 6 months they think entirely different, because they miss so much. Because, we just look at a person and we have certain ideas. Don't realize that a lot of what we're doing is we're going on emotion, not our thinking.
Yes.
And that's what I focus on in the book a lot about, how once emotion comes into play, we have distortions that we don't even realize. We think they're factual. I tell a story in the group about the title of the chapter is "I Saw Jesus Move." I tell the story because when I was a young boy, I was in a parochial school, and I was getting ready to go to high school, and the high school was a public school and a parochial school, but the public school had football, and I loved football, and the Catholic school didn't. So the Catholic priest was trying to talk me into going to the Catholic school, and I was very attached to him. So I was very confused, but I really didn't want to give up the sport I loved. So I went to church every morning in this dark little basement church for 8 days in a row. And I had this agreement with Jesus that if he moved to the right, I could go to the public school. And if he moved to the left, I would go to the parochial school. Well, on day 8, he moved to the right. And I was so happy. Now, I really believe that he moved. Now, today, you probably look at me and say that probably the statue didn't move. But I thought he moved.
Yes.
And I ran out of that church and I didn't feel any guilt. And I thought I could go do what I wanted to do. And I was free because I saw what I wanted to see. That's what confirmation bias is.
Right.
We have a longing to see a certain outcome. And as soon as we get a little piece of information that confirms our outcome, we say, oh, yeah, that's right. Rather than being more objective and using empathy as a tool to slow down and say, you don't really know that that's right. What do you mean? Did you listen to the whole study to see? Do you know where it came from? Was it a study of 6 people rather than 2,000?
Yeah. One of the book titles that you have here is The Soulful Leader, Success and Authenticity, Integrity, and Empathy. And I'm so glad that you mentioned empathy so much. And of course, the other book is The Triumph of Diversity, along with your America United, which we'll get back to. But so few people, look at empathy and just think that it's a woo-woo thing or somebody that is oversensitive. And I'm a person that very much promotes of feeling your knowledge, not thinking it. Because when the soul, your divine presence, whatever you wish to call it, connects with the heart and truth, it goes to the spirit into action, and the mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. Because the head is filled with data. It's God knows how much information it has up there. It's its own little computer, terabytes up there. But if we don't know how to use the knowledge, then we're going to misuse the knowledge. But if we can bring in that empathy, that divine presence, that truth, kindness, caring, love, come from that place, we'll actually understand which knowledge is really impactful and how to use it wisely. And I think that a lot of it is to do with that empathy and leadership, is that when you feel it, you feel that truth and you understand it, not only because you've listened, but you felt the words that have been spoken.
You express that so beautifully. It's so accurate. And, there's a consulting firm in England that examined the Fortune 500 companies. What did they find out? The companies that had an empathic environment earned 40% more profits than those in the bottom 10%.
Yep.
And why is that? Because when you're leading with empathy, people want to be with you. They want to follow you. They believe in you because you're actually listening to them. When you employ empathic listening, you're a leader who they know they can gain your attention. And you may not agree with everything that they're presenting, but they know that they were heard.
They feel it. It's not just a thought, it's a feel it. We're so busy just head up. And, you can spin any tale and it can be, totally misstrued or bought into, and it can spin out of control in your head. But if you just take that deep breath, center yourself and go right down to the very core of you and go, okay, am I buying this? Is this really true? Is there something in it? There's always an element of truth in something. Now I'm going to be still enough and calm enough to look at what that truth is before I join the tornado bandwagon. But we really have to realize we're getting caught up in something. And it's very easy. It's very easy. We know when you're at a party or you're at a celebration, the euphoria, you lift right up. Well, it's very easy if you've got a bunch of people coming in with the hate rhetoric all the time.
Yes.
To get caught up. And so you have to take onus of, is this kind? Is this caring? Is this loving? Not only to the other people, but even to myself or my own psyche.
Yes. Yes. And when you excite people that way with angry, hateful rhetoric, you produce the stress hormone cortisol. What does cortisol do? It takes your empathic range from out here to in
Yeah.
here. It produces very narrow-minded, repetitive thinking. And people don't even realize that they're being manipulated in a crowd when they're listening to that rhetoric. You're being manipulated to lose your range of perception to a very narrow perception, black and white thinking. You're bad, I'm good, you're bad. There's no gray.
No.
There's no middle ground.
No room for anything else other than what I've said is, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything when you look at divided, there's somebody come along that's kind of cut that knife down the center because they know they can. They, look at all the world leaders, even Hitler and everything else. I mean, he was a very insecure, troubled man, but he had an eloquent way of speaking, and the way that he did it, and the way he riled people up, and the way he got people so afraid of him and to do such atrocities for him. And it's like you when you look at him after the fact, his power was in that presence of stirring things up, wasn't it, and making
Yes.
other people do things for him.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Very much so. He commanded a crowd. When I wrote the book, The Power of Empathy, I was away we have a summer home in Maine, and I was with six very close friends, and I took out any reference to the Third Reich or Germany, and I gave 10 quotes that Adolf Hitler made, and then I asked people who made them. They said, "Oh, the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, Buddha," because he talked about we are one and one spirit. And, he was just seducing people in with nice rhetoric. And then it got more dangerous once they were attached, and then more dangerous. And then he picked an enemy,
Yes.
and then, the Jews have done this to you, and they're doing it to you. But they had already been seduced.
Yes.
By his language, by taking this depressed country and making people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And his language was very spiritual.
Yes.
I mean, he knew enough to do that. Not that he believed in anything, but he knew how to manipulate.
Yeah. You recently had a president in America who thought that he could do that, but he couldn't, because basically he was just a shite stirrer. And, and it was all about the anger. It was all about the hatred. And it was so absolutely evident. And it made people who normally don't get angry at the fact that people were buying into it.
Yes.
Why can't you see him? Why can't you see this? And it's like people getting hooked up into it. And it's like, as you said, it's, you're at the fair, there's all this candy around, and you've had permission to eat it all. And now you're on this sugar high, but wait until you get the crash.
Yes.
Because there's always going to be a crash.
When as you've said, and as you know, leadership matters.
Oh gosh, yes.
You have a leader who's sadistic and narcissistic.
Yes.
Eventually, whoever they're leading, whatever country they're leading, company they're leading, it's going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
It always will be. And I try to tell people, I'm not talking about being a Democrat or a Republican. Yep. I'm talking about an individual. Yep. When you have an individual like that, it brings out the worst in people. And it gets people, Democrats calling Republicans names and vice versa. And it becomes a war because people like that thrive on that. Because that's the only way they can maintain power. They have no other ability to maintain power.
And look how long it lasted, because, I mean, Hitler managed to keep it for a good period of time, and the atrocities that he got people to do on his behalf. But, other leaders, it's out of fear, or it's out of anger, or it's out of hate, but you can't keep that hate rhetoric up for so long. It's going to burn out in you, and it says that sugar high where you come down and you crash. Yes. And it's so much harder to pick yourself back up again. When you're in a state of love and kindness, you're on a beautiful flow all the time, a wonderful rhythm of life, where you can't knowingly go and hurt someone else because it's against the very grain of you.
Yes.
But if the hate and it takes so much energy to go up there and to sustain, and they can't sustain it and crash down again. And what do? They go out looking for the next addiction, and the next fix.
And then to add to your point, look what's happened in terms of prejudice in America. You have the highest rates of anti-Semitism, highest rates of Islamophobia, highest rates of racism, highest rates of sexism, highest rates of discrimination against people of different sexual orientation. Why? Because all that hate gets directed to these groups.
Yeah.
All that hate gets directed to these groups. So now we're a place where people from other countries say, they don't want to come here.
No.
And when they see what happened on January 6th, and what I try to explain in the book as well, is when you see a man, January 6th, picking up a pole and hitting a police officer over the head over and over again, that had nothing to do with politics.
No.
Nothing. That had nothing to do with Donald Trump. That's a personality issue. That's a person who's never resolved their anger, resentment, and hatred internally and is projecting it out on someone else. That's not political. Because I have Republican patients and Republican friends. They would never do that. Mm-hmm. Take a plane to Washington and pick up a pole and hit an innocent person and try to kill him. And he was yelling, "Get his gun, we'll shoot him." I mean, who does that?
Yes.
And
thugs. It's a thug mentality.
Yeah, and they're talking about it like it's political. That's right. Not political.
No. That was the excuse. That was the excuse for the thuggism. And, we see this in military, we see it in the police force. People used to go into that because it's a tough career, because they wanted to represent their communities. They wanted to be that safety. And in a lot of ways, it's become the thug mentality. And a lot of that is in the training, right? They're not training to police people. They're training to bring people down, which need the military training in the police force, which should not be. It has its place in certain areas, but certainly not on your mainstream. I grew up with the policeman walking the street. You knew his name. He knew everybody. And it was a community thing. Now is that people are petrified of the police, no matter what color they are. And you just say one bad word to them and out comes the gun. And it's a thug mentality. And so why are we allowing these people to put on the uniform in the first place? Where is the scrutiny of that? And have we completely lost control?
Yes, I mean, and one of the questions I've been asked in regard to this book is, what is the resolution in terms of the police? I believe a clinical psychologist should be on every police force.
I agree with you.
and police officers then can be taught how to handle certain people who are mentally ill or in a rage or drug dependent or alcohol dependent, without reaching for a gun. You don't have to do that. When someone is driving away in a car and you're trying to catch them, put a bullet in the tires.
Yes.
Don't shoot the person in the back. Put a bullet in the tires. Yeah. What's going to happen if you do that? The car isn't going to go anymore.
Right.
Instead of shooting a man in the heart, you could shoot a person in the leg if you have to. You don't have to shoot them in the heart where they're going to die. I mean, there are ways of dealing with this. And I've had clients who are police officers for many years and detectives, and 90% of them are very good people, but some of them are people that should not have a gun and not have a uniform. But there has to be an assessment there.
Yes.
Who is interviewing this person to say, look, this personality should not have that kind of authority. This person cannot handle it. There's no way.
You've also got the people that, have been really handling it for a long time, and then it's kind of one case too many, and the post-traumatic stress is there. But the stigma is if they go to the police psychologist, they're going to be deemed not to be able to go back to duty. So they're not going to talk about it. They're going to bottle it up. And the next thing we have a George Floyd thing happening. And it's like, they're human beings. And they need to talk about it. Don't persecute them for coming and talking about their emotions. Let them work through it. It only makes them stronger. It also, then you can decide, really, this is time for you to take time out and step right back and think whether you want to come back into the police force. Because I recommend you really do need the time out, but not with penalty. And this is something that's wrong too, right? The punishment that is there. As a psychologist, anybody that bottles anything up for any period of time, at some point it's going to explode. And most of the time it's either self-harm or harming someone else. So
Yes.
we really need to deal with it right at the beginning before it gets to that level.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. There needs to be help when people are traumatized. And of course, police officers can be traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have senior police officers who advocate for that,
Yes.
advocate for people to seek psychotherapy. But also there needs to be psychologists in the departments who are helping people understand certain illnesses, certain addictions. Look, a lot of what they're doing is dealing with people who are mentally ill on the street, or people who are addicted to one substance or another. Uh, and that's complicated. These people will say things when they're in a state of inebriation that they wouldn't necessarily say if they were sober. So you can't take it so personally, where you have to man up and sort of
Yeah.
defeat, show them,
Yeah.
who's
Who's boss? I've got the uniform and the gun. Yeah. I mean, you hear this a lot with, autistic people, or dementia, and they're in distress and they're seeing people act out, and they must be on drugs, and they go into their hand, into their pocket, and, who knows what they're going to bring out. It never is a weapon, and immediately let's shoot them now and ask questions later. And how do you feel about actually social workers working with the police, literally traveling with the police, especially in troubled areas?
I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great idea. And I know many people in the mental health field would love to be in those positions, because you could really make a difference.
How do we make it happen, though? I mean, you've got such an entrenched, I mean, right now we look at from the outside in, and with Congress, with everything else, we think, how can we get common sense to prevail? There are many, many solutions to the problem, but it feels like you're trying to just chisel a diamond with a stone in trying to get it across. How do we get it across? Many of the stories that I share here on social self-discovery media are people that have seen things that are wrong and go as citizens to put things right and create laws, etc., because they know that if they wait for Congress or anything else, it's never going to happen. So they're stepping up themselves and forming their own organizations. Kudos to them. We need them, but they shouldn't have to be doing that.
Mhm. I think that it's an uphill battle, but each of us has to be responsible for a few things as adults. One is resolving the unresolved hurts that we have from our childhood or our adolescence, so that we don't carry it into our adulthood.
Amen.
We need to do that so that we don't pass it on and transfer it to other people. Secondly, we need to be on a journey, if you're not already, of self-discovery and understanding yourself and committing to perceiving accurately. It's a practice. You have to practice it. We all have biases. Everyone grows up with different biases about themselves and others. And we, as individuals, if we commit to perceiving accurately, we start to make a difference.
Yeah.
And we can never assume that that won't make a difference, because if you do that, then you may encourage me to do that. And I may encourage somebody else to do that. And then I take it to my group or your group, or, and there are a lot of people who are committed to this throughout the country. I mean, the concept of empathy circles and deliberate polling, where you bring people together and you have an expert come in on a certain subject like climate change, and you have two groups of people that are, and this has been done, who are exact opposites. One doesn't believe in it and the other does. And then after 2 days together, having reasonable conversations and doing some reading that the expert gives them, 70% of the people leave with a changed mind.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they actually looked at the facts.
Yeah.
These are the facts.
Yeah.
Is the ice melting in the polar regions, or is it not? Here's the fact. You can debate it all you want, but this is the fact.
I had a wonderful author on. He's a pilot, and his book is Just Two Choices. He said the engine is on or it's off, and you're going to act accordingly, or you're going to do a nosedive into the water or wherever you are. And even this show, Choose Positive Living, abstaining from a choice is a choice. We're always making choices, but are we making choices based on education or reaction or fear? Are we listening to the right people for the right data, or have we bought into something that's being sold, the drama, the soap opera drama that constantly is going on. It is our choice what we buy. And I'm so pleased that you brought up the childhood drama. I have a book that's going to be coming out, which is collective authors, each contributing a chapter, and it's called the Forgotten Children series. And we're going to be talking about many of the problems that we're addressing in adulthood could have been prevented if we'd taken care of our children when they were younger. But most certainly is also about the forgotten child inside of us, because so many people are going through some emotional things as adults that are stemming from either a child of abuse or neglect, or didn't have a voice, or some form of pain, or some trauma that was around them that was never dealt with. And if we don't deal with it, it's going to manifest somewhere down the road. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because we really do have to address the inner child inside of us, because most of us are carrying an injured child around with us.
Yes. Oh, that sounds like a wonderful book. I mean, that's an important idea to explore, because it has such consequences in adulthood.
Yes.
We have to resolve the past so that we don't carry it into the present. And I don't like to belabor the past with people. I only focus on it when it interferes with the present.
Right. Yeah, it's not about you reliving your drama and all of that. We don't want you to relive the pain. We want you to look at the pain and go, why is it stopping me from living? Right. So that, and when you look at the people that are so easily triggered into anger, or who have such a lack of empathy, who are narcissistic, that does come back to that childhood. Of the living in that survival of me, myself, and I've got to protect myself, and never kind of reaching out into the sharing of the community and the caring for others. It's a defense mechanism, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I talk about it's an unresolved, deep hurt that then allows people to stay stuck in narcissism, and then it often can go along with sadism.
Yes.
And we've had permission in this country in the last 4 or 5 years to be sadistic. It's okay. People have said things on TV and in the radio that we've never heard before.
Right.
Such insults,
Yes.
insult after insult after insult, and people have gotten desensitized to it. It's like, oh, that's the way they talk now. So other people start to talk that way, and people who are angry and feel disenfranchised, and then they fall prey to this. We 123 people per day commit suicide in America per day, and 70% of them are white, middle-class, unemployed men in the Midwest and South. And those are the people that were promised that coal is coming back and different kinds of machinery is going to come back and so forth and so on. None of it happened, but they were given an option for their anger.
Yes.
Look what the Democrats are doing to you.
Right.
And a lot of them were Democrats and became Republicans because they believed that this was going to be the answer. Now they're so wrapped up in it that they're not really examining the fact that nothing happened.
Right.
You still don't have a job.
Right.
They don't care about you.
Yeah.
It was all propaganda to get your vote.
Yes.
It was manipulation. You don't have a job. Coal isn't coming back. None of these things came true. The unemployment rates in the South and the Midwest in America are still skyrocket. Nothing's changed.
But there's always an invitation that if it's not there, you can step up and be creative and create something. The pivoting, there is always a choice to pivot to something else. I often refer to the book Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. The two mice and two men around a abundant cheese, the cheese is gone and the different reaction. And, right now we've got the hem character is, give me back my cheese. I want my cheese. Who do I have to kill for my cheese? And it's like, look, man, the cheese is gone. You want more cheese or you want more substance? You're the one that's going to have to get innovative to go out and find it. Don't just sit there waiting and grumbling and growling and shooting off. That is called survival. When it's no longer there, you have to go looking for something else. And that's part of our personal growth. But for some people, it's the entitlement. I should have it, give it back to me. It's my right.
Well, when people have that tendency, and then you have leaders that are saying the way you're thinking is correct.
Yeah.
It's okay. Look what they're doing to you. You're a victim.
Mm.
You should be angry. We're going to march on the Capitol. You're given permission instead of it being corrected
Yeah.
and reversed, which just is an inward problem. You can't solve an inward problem with an external solution. But instead of doing that, it's saying, the misdirection you were going in, that's the correct direction.
Mm-hmm.
Join me in the fight. We're going to fight.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fight. So as long as you fight hard, things will happen that are good for you.
And when we talk about fighting, we're not talking about taking up guns or pitchforks. There's a different. We all fight for survival in some form or other, and it doesn't have to always be hard, and it doesn't always have to be about suffering. It's the willingness to explore, to be wondrous, to be adventurous. How many people, and I'm sure you've seen it a great deal in your work, but in my shows that I do, the people that have come from, I call it the cosmic 2x4, it's flattened them. They've bottomed out. Their world has completely crumbled. They've had an enormous amount of loss in some form or other, but they decided to go through the process, discover their strength, discover their courage, discover their abilities, discover their meaningful purpose. And now they've stepped into that realm and now serving other people, because that was their journey to have to their meaningful purpose and calling. But if we're not willing to go through the proper process, we're never going to discover what we're really here for.
And, I try to explain in the book how when people get involved with groups, and it could be any different kind of group where you feel comfortable, but people start to help you. I give examples of people who are unemployed and depressed and suicidal, but then they're in a group with people who have overcome.
Yes.
And they give them some advice. And maybe you could go to a community college and you become a surgical technician. You can get a loan. Or maybe you can start going to a gym. I go to a gym. Or you can take a yoga class. And initially they reject all of that. But as attachment becomes more formidable, they start to follow the other people. And things start to change because it's the help of the other people. It's the guide. And some people that look at the AA program, people have been through it and they give so much to other people of their time because that's what was done for them.
Right.
Drive people to meetings, they help people get jobs, they get you a cup of coffee and a hamburger or something you want to eat because somebody did that for them.
Right. And that's what community is about, right? That's what community is about. Also inspiration begets invitation. When somebody is inspired by somebody else, their story, what they've done through it. I relate with them. Gosh, they went through that and look who they are and what they're doing today. Is there something inside of me that's capable of doing that as well? And so, that we also have to be very careful with whatever progress that we take, is that we also don't put false expectations on other people. Just because we manage to make that journey up to that particular level doesn't mean that that particular level is for everyone. Each person has their own journey for their own reason, for their own meaningful purpose. So it's not somebody duplicating your journey. It's them being inspired by it to discover the courage and the strength and the abilities for their own journey.
Yes, so true. Yeah, to find their unique place. What fits for you or what fits uniquely for someone else.
Exactly. And we are unique. That's the beauty of it, right? We're all beautifully flawsome. Let's talk about the book Triumph of Diversity, because I love this one as well. Tell us about that one too.
Well, diversity, as prejudice has increased in America, diversity has decreased. So I wrote the book to try to explain to people all the benefits of diversity. You open up your mind when you're exposed to people from different cultures, different religions, different countries. And, I in my practice, because I've met so many people all over the world, I haven't been to these places, but I kind of feel like I have, because you learn from their cultures and the way they perceive. And I've always learned from different religions as well. Take a piece from one and a piece from another, or an insight or a piece of wisdom from another. And that's what diversity is. It is not a bad thing. It had become a bad thing in this current era, that we this white supremacy issue, that the people of color are going to take over the world. Well, guess what? The people of color are here and they're not going away. And there's more kids of color in American schools than there are kids who are white. And that's not going to change either.
Right.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
In fact, kids that grow up in diverse areas, they have less fear and less insecurity, because when they meet somebody from a different culture, they're not surprised. It's not a big deal. It's not like odd thing, like, oh my God, she looks so different or he looks so different. Human beings react to differences in appearance. But once we get familiarized and become comfortable, it's not an issue anymore.
Just the vessel that we were born in, the culture that we bring to the table. If we could actually look at somebody's heart and soul, see that first. It doesn't matter what the container's in. As I said, they may be bringing an African or an Asian or, East Indian type culture to it. It doesn't matter. The whole point of it is what's the heart and soul connection. And children see heart and soul. They don't care what the container is. Racism is taught. People are not born with it. And racism comes out of fear. And of course, as you've pointed out, I can hear a racist right there going, yes, there's less white people in the schools. They're diminishing us. No, they're not. But who made America? Who made Canada, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa? Immigrants, people that were willing to, for whatever reason, leave the country they know, go to another country and start again. And that is what's made it a beautiful smorgasbord of wonderful diversity and cultures, right? And without those cultures, what would it be? And we should be celebrating that and realizing the gift that it's actually giving us.
To your point, if you talk to a kindergarten teacher, they'll tell you at recess, all the kids outside are playing with each other. Boys hold each other's hands. They don't know anything about the difference in culture or race, but they will tell you by the time they're in 4th or 5th grade, you see a difference. Because it's the parents that are pulling them away. And the Indian kids have to eat lunch with the Indian kids, and the Chinese kids. And they see, our daughter is a kindergarten teacher, and she says, once I meet the parents, I almost know what's going to happen in the next few years. Because you can see how closed they might be or how open they might be. Because those kids are going to go into the world and feel safer. But if you feel like you only have to be with your little clan and the other people are different or threatening, you're always in a position of insecurity. Prejudice causes tension. Prejudice causes the release of the stress hormone. Because you're not comfortable with me because I look different. And like you said, what about the heart and soul?
Yes.
Is that different?
Hopefully we all have one. Anxiety is one of those things that brings about dis-ease. And we're seeing more diseases at a higher rate than ever before, which I believe is coming around. A great deal, obviously, diet and exercise, but I think a great deal coming around from anxiety and fear and that completely throwing off the entire body's equilibrium. Are you seeing that?
Yes, absolutely. I think we're at a time where stress is very high, and as I mentioned before, the stress hormone cortisol is very damaging when it's in excess in the body. I mean, it kills neurons in the memory center of the brain. It causes excess fat cells. It causes weight gain. It causes anxiety, depression. It causes insomnia. It causes hair loss. I mean, it is a very damaging stress hormone that we can't afford to have in our system very long. But when you go out in the world and you're in a world with all this prejudice and hate, you are stressed. How can you not be stressed? Because you don't feel safe and comfortable. Then you have to go back to your own little clan where you only know a few people that you feel safe with. And that has become more common now. And what the triumph of diversity would be, open up, reach out.
Yes.
Don't stay just with people who look like you or talk.
How boring.
Yes. Novelty, the brain needs novelty.
Yes. I mean, we look at Alzheimer's and dementia, some people have put it to deodorant and aluminium and there's other elements, etc. But, I feel that an awful lot of people, we see this memory loss that they get as they get older, but it's that they've stopped engaging themselves in new things. or,
Yes.
or in doing something that requires their mind to really be deep and work out a puzzle, because that's what it's there for, right? It's there to constantly, find a solution or an equation to something. And the moment they kind of come back, well, yeah, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to think anymore. Well, your brain is then shutting down and going, okay, all right, I can leave you now.
Yeah, I mean that's so true. You see the depression rates, the alcoholism rates in people who are retired and are just doing the same thing every day. And yeah, you look, when I'm on vacation, I'm a pretty high energy person, but I'm on vacation for a couple of weeks and someone says, well, who's going to go get the milk? And it's just like 2 minutes down the road, oh, you want me to go get it? You want me to, I mean, I get a little lazy in the
Yeah,
brain, because I'm not really doing much.
right. Yeah, yeah. And then when you do get active, everything about you, your posture, your this, your that, everything about you is sharper. And when you are tired because it's been mind body that has been working, and it's ready to tire down instead of tired just because it's feeling lethargic because you're not doing anything. So,
Well, the old saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Yeah.
yeah. And I think, there is no age barrier anymore, is there? Is that it doesn't matter. Don't use the age as an excuse. I live with a almost 88-year-old who is just a dynamo of energy, and that her sheer joy of life is intoxicating. The simple little things that she enjoys so much. And then, the oldest person I've interviewed is 88, who has her own TV show and who's just got a new love interest. So, the thing is, it's not over. It's about your participation in life.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to buy into the division, if you're going to buy into the hate, if you're going to buy into the loathing and all of that, you're going to shorten your life. One way or the other, you're going to shorten your life. You're certainly going to be constantly living a miserable life. But when you can come from the heart, come from the soul, ignite with other people's hearts and souls, we really want to be there of how can we build? How can we support? How can we expand this beautiful energy into something that really can be exuberant and embracing and a safe haven for other people? There's a beautiful reason to live, and to live long and prosper.
Yes. Yes. You express yourself very, very well. You're very wise.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a tremendous amount of wisdom.
Well, it's I'm a knowingness coach, which I channel, but also been around the block a few times. And these gray hairs have got quite a number of things that have happened on them. So we learn.
You're observing and learning as you're going around the block.
We have to do that, though, don't we? And I think the other thing is, please do not be a self-persecutor, because that is just something that just holds us back. And we are that when we feel we don't fit in, or we're not living up to other people's expectations. I should be more like so-and-so. No, you shouldn't. Be yourself. This is the reason you were given you, is to be the exuberant you and bring that to the table. And if it's not enough for some people, that's okay. It's going to be enough for the people that get your vibe and become part of your tribe.
Yes.
Because we can sure get ourselves into a piddle over that one, can't we? So I've only got 3 books here. So there is the 4 books. I've got the Triumph of Diversity, the Soulful Leader, and obviously America Reunited. But do you have another one there? You mentioned something about the empathy book.
Power of Empathy it was a book, one of my first books.
Mm-hmm. And it's still in, people can still get it?
Yeah, it's on Kindle on Amazon now, and it's been published in, I think, 8 different countries right now.
Wonderful.
Just got published in China.
Oh, do they need to read it there? Yeah. I think anybody that leads with empathy, it's just respect and consideration, right? It's one of those things that it's integrity, right? And if we aren't prepared to hear, I mean, if somebody is so angry and they are so outraged, and you could just get them to slow down for a moment, which don't react, right? And just say, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's get to the core of this. Why are you so angry? Let's reverse engineer. Because this reaction isn't about, you hate my face. This reaction is going far, far deeper.
Yes.
But we've got to be willing to take that journey of that discovery of what is our issue, how do we release it so we can step up and be a more fruitful person.
And empathy is the one capacity that allows the person who's angry to slow down and uncover what's beneath it. Because most of the time, anger is a secondary emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You're hurt, you're disappointed, you feel slighted, any of those things, and then you get angry. Because superficially, the adrenaline flows and you feel like you have some power because you're going to insult me or say something nasty, and that's going to make a difference when it only makes everything worse. But when you're able to slow down people who are angry and ask them exactly what is hurting you, what is hurting you that you're so angry, you start to find out what their perceptions are. And then you can start to tease out what's accurate in their perceptions and what's inaccurate. And that's where the change takes place. Because when you relax them, that's what empathy does. You're producing, the giving and receiving of empathy produces oxytocin, the near miracle, love connected hormone. And it makes people feel generous and trusted and safe. And when you can do that, you can get underneath the anger to find out, what is it made up of?
Yeah.
Well, I know you don't like me. Based on what? Well, you were frowning. Well, I had a headache.
Right. And we're not saying that you have to go around liking and loving everyone, but it is, don't go around persecuting them or macheting them because you don't like their vibe. It just means that you're on a different frequency, which is, we all travel at different frequencies, and the basic thing is, are we collectively creating a harmony, or are we creating a disruption? And we've been in flight or fight mode, I think a man has, since the beginning of time. And I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. When the elves say it's the time of man, and I think it's the time of man to grow up and to step up into a more empathic and considerate and compassionate and loving way, because our survival and the survival of the planet really needs it. We've seen through history, anger and hate produces nothing but death and discord and destruction.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree.
So let's get people up there stepping into it, and let's see, where can they find your books for a start?
Well, they're all on Amazon.
Right. So that's The Triumph of Diversity, The Soulful Leader, The Empathetic, what's it called?
The Power of Empathy.
The Power of Empathy, and America Reunited. And they can find that all on Amazon. Now, how did they find you, and what are you offering people?
My website is balanceyoursuccess.com. They can reach me through the website.
And what are you offering people? How can you help them?
Well, I'm in full-time private practice, and I have 3 groups, and I do Zoom sessions with people all over the country and in other countries. So luckily, with this technology, we don't have to be in person anymore. So right. I can talk to anyone. So I can consult. I consult with companies and institutions, but also individuals, and do a lot of relationship psychotherapy.
I firmly believe that it's the individuals that collectively come together that are going to be the change that we are needing in the world, and that then the leadership will change according to that. But if we're waiting for leadership to lead us the way, we're going to keep being on a rocky road. If we step up as communities, as individuals, and say, this is my part in it, this is my part that I'm going to put right, I'm inviting other people to join me, we start seeing that domino effect, and that's how we're going to change the society.
Yes.
But it all stems with us. What's inside of us? What's upsetting us? Why are we reacting the way we are? Why do we think the way we are? We need to take that ownership. We need to look inside and go, where is it coming from? Is it serving me? Is it serving anyone else around me? How do I reprogram myself into thinking in a more open and positive and loving way?
Yes.
And then we will see a totally different world, which I'm looking forward to seeing, most certainly.
Me too. I'm certainly looking forward to a change in our tenor, in our way of relating, and hoping that kindness, compassion, and empathy can return. and will be accompanied by civility and rationality.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So balanceyoursuccess.com. Please reach out to him. There are many institutions where you talked about with the police force and anything where we're dealing with people that may be different and that we need help, like the social worker in there, the psychotherapists in the organization. It's not just the police force, it's everywhere when we need that common sense and that balance. And before you make that decision or that reaction, let's look at what potentially the outcome could come from that. So we need that in every organization. So, I advocate for that, because we can't just keep going on the adrenaline only, because we know that that's not working.
Yes.
Take the deep breath. Let's look at the situation. Is this going to work for you? And you need somebody with a rational mind and that comes from the heart that's going to do that, which is really important. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This has been an absolute delight. And thank you for writing the books and sharing and doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed talking with you very much.
Thank you. Folks, we all have the solution around us, within us, within our community. Let's just put down the anger. Let's just say, I'm tired of it. I hate the way it makes me feel. There is so much more that we can do. And like United, we are a beautiful, beautiful canvas. So let's step up and be a part of that canvas. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.